This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Stars tonight together. Here everyone's singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for August 30th, 2022. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Network podcast feed or on our own dedicated podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. If you are on Apple Podcasts or on Google Podcasts, throw us 5 stars and a review while you're at it. You can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing page. You click the red box that says sponsor this podcast, and you can set up a one-time or reoccurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we'd like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears. Joining alongside, as always, our co-host Case Low and Case. I'm actually going to be in your neck of the woods sooner rather than later. And, you know, it's been a year since I've been in Chicago, a year since we had the tumultuous barbecue drive to Now Arena. How are you, though, knowing that we are like 3 days out from All Out, basically, and seeing me?
I keep on forgetting the show is this weekend. I was reminded of that by somebody else that is coming into town today. They were texting me kind of wanting to know what I was doing this weekend. And I was like, oh, you know, usual stuff. Well, you know, what's up? They're like, well, I'm going to be in Chicago. And I was like, oh, that's right. You know, I'm going to All Out. I'm sure it'll be fun. My goal is to spend as little of time at Hoffman Estates as humanly possible. Last year, I put in a lot of hours, attended a Game Changer show that I did not want to attend. Rather, I attended a Game Changer show where I watched 2 matches and then made my ride drive me back to the hotel because I was having such a miserable time. It's not a show I'm looking forward to, and that's not even a comment on AEW's product. I rather enjoy TV most weeks. There's just something about this year that I'm just like, ugh, I gotta go there again. My seats are up high this year. It's a headache for me for whatever reason. I'm sure the show will be good. Hopefully I run into you. Hopefully I run into Rich Craich. Hopefully I run into a few other people. But it's so out of sight, out of mind for me. I think I'm going to be just like, oh, Sunday morning is going to come around. I'm going to be like, oh, that's right. I have this thing I have to go to today. It's not not as much excitement as it was 2018, 2019, 2021.
Yeah, it's something that it's not that I think that you are spoiled by like everything that happens around Chicago, but I guess since like for someone like me who has to travel basically to any show I go to, it's very much at the forefront for me. But it's also something that like I look at what's going on this weekend and I compare it like 2019, 2021, and I'm just going, this is interesting to see how things have panned out 3 years, 4 years later. You know, like that's the thing that I kind of find most interesting about this weekend. It's not necessarily the show. It's like, all right, we are basically 4 years in on this experiment. How is it at? And gotta say, the vibes are weird right now. That's where I think it's at. It's weird.
Well, this could all change by the time a good chunk of people listen to this podcast, but you got to remember my interest in wrestling and remember that the card we have right now, there's likely going to be no CM Punk, which was the big draw for me last year. The Young Bucks don't have a match announced. Pac doesn't have a match announced. There's one other person that we don't know what the Young Bucks are going to do yet. It's just like, okay, maybe this show will be good, but I don't feel like we don't even have a main event. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to get excited about stuff. As we're recording, I just saw that Eddie Kingston versus Ishii was added to the pre-show, which fine, Eddie Kingston's a nice little worker. Tomohiro Ishii is one of the best of all time. I'm sure that'll be okay. But yeah, it's just, I don't know what to make of it, but that's also because I don't know what the card is going to be for the most part.
Yeah, and it's something that I wonder, and it's like one of those like ponderous questions for me with how their schedule has changed and how things have kind of like moved around the AEW schedule wise. I mean, they had a fly-in show to Chicago 8 weeks ago. They have a Grand Slam, people going to Queens coming up in less than a month. They're going to Toronto, and this is on top of, for whatever whatever momentum you want to credit WWE, they have something right now. So it's something that I think that also kind of has hampered this year. The fact that there's just we're almost have too many fly-in weekends given just everything right now. It just seems like that this might be a little bit of the just to its detriment, basically.
Can I just say the air quotes momentum that WWE has right now drives me absolutely insane.
Could you tell the contempt when I was saying that?
It's just, could the bar be any lower? Like,
you know what I've said for years,
which is what?
People just want secretly WWE to be 10% better, if that be AEW or the idea of Triple H led promotion here. It's no real change. It's nothing.
Okay, I have to put a pin on that. Mike, I'm watching Michinoku Pro in the background right now. This is bad radio, but I have to tell somebody this.
No, this is very important radio for someone like me. All right, what year are you looking at?
So I'm watching a show. This is on YouTube. It's October 19th, 1999. It's Gran Hamada and Mins Teo versus Curryman and Sua. And I just watched Mins Teo whip Sua like they're on the floor in front of the front row. He whipped Sua into the chairs, and Sua, like, most guys like fall over and they like create a mess with the chairs. It's got to be like the best bump in wrestling because it doesn't look like it hurts that bad, but it just creates absolute pandemonium. Sua stepped onto the base of a chair and then basically swanton bombed himself like 4 rows deep. You have to watch this. This was one of the craziest bumps I've ever seen, and it happened in like an undercard tag team match.
I like the fact that you made sure you say it was Mins Teo, but like in '99, like, do you think he's dealing with a little bit of bitterness there, handling young boy Sue at that point?
A Michinoku Pro show, notably without Taka Michinoku on it. Yeah, I wonder if he's a little upset. Yeah,
1999. I mean, Dolphin's gone at that point.
Dolphin's gone, Togo's gone, Taka's gone, and the main event is Great Sasuke versus Tiger Mask 4. So how the mighty have fallen. I'm sorry. I want to talk about this WWE thing more. I've never seen a bump like that before. That is on YouTube. Michinoku Pro, October 19th, 1999. I've never seen what I just saw, and I had to make mention of it. But as for the WWE thing, the bar could not be any lower. It's embarrassing. And no, I haven't watched any of it. No, I'm not going to watch any of it. Luckily, we do a show that, although we're respected and beloved and HelloFresh pays us money every once in a while, we are tucked away in a little corner to where I can voice my opinion that Vince McMahon, in charge or not, I am actively rooting against WWE. I do not like them. I do not like anything about them. Triple H's presentation is not a radical departure from what they were doing. So I'm not really interested in, even at this point, a slightly better version of what Vince is doing. It's still a roster with guys like Akira Tozawa and Mustafa Ali and Cedric Alexander and guys that should be more important than they actually are. And the way that I see some people tripping over themselves to compliment this promotion, it just drives me absolutely insane.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that we are a show of reason. I mean, I am not going to applaud a Hollywood agent who's confident at doing their jobs and also make sure that their sex creep friends get a taste while they're at it. And, you know, whatever person I think is in there from the overall McMahon axis, and nothing's going to truly change. And I don't think the wrestling industry improves until they're fully excised from the industry, one way or another. So
the Vince story's not dead yet, and when it resurfaces, when it becomes headline news once more, do not let those people that tripped all over themselves on that Pat McAfee interview, do not let them forget it. That is my one ask to this listener base. It's not that you watch Dragon Gate, it's not that you care about our show. When more Vince stuff comes out, the people that applauded the Pat McAfee interview, do not let them forget it.
I mean, God, you're absolutely right about that case. But so this week on the program, we have two shows that happened over the weekend. They were at the home base of Kobe Sambo Hall. They were also at Nara Centennial Hall for Naruki Doi's homecoming show. But case, just off the top, this weekend was dry and repeating. I think that's a fair way to describe the Dragon Gate weekend. Well, what was your big takeaway from it?
That's exactly it. It's important to note that there's been bad Dragon Gate shows this year, and we've talked at length about those bad shows. I do not think those shows were bad. These shows were bad. Unfortunately, they were just thoroughly uninteresting, and I told Mike earlier today, I don't have an hour of thoughts between these two shows. Sometimes we come on here with a single show review, whether it's, Kyoto, Fukuoka, Osaka, whatever, and we can talk for 90 minutes about it. There was something about these two shows. A few interesting things happened in Kobe. I thought there were a few decent matches in Nara on the Doi homecoming show, but ultimately, I just have nothing important to say about these shows. I could have gone at length about Mochizuki Jr. and Ishinihashi and Ryu Fuda, but I did that last week. And so whatever talking point I was going to have this week, I did it last week. So I can't repeat myself. I don't know. Again, these shows weren't bad. There were a handful of matches that I thought were pretty enjoyable, but on the whole, I just couldn't sink my teeth into anything. From the opening bell to the final match, I just wanted these shows to be over, and they wouldn't end.
Yeah, and this is something that if you're someone who is a newer listener and you hear Case referring to how much I dreaded Kobe Ensemble Hall in 2017, 2018, it's not that they are long shows. It's just that they are the 10 minutes will feel like it takes 30. That's the thing about that. And you're absolutely right. It's not that there wasn't bad stuff happening or that these were completely without merit. It's just something that really, we have two topics really coming out of this weekend, and it's a continuation of last week. It's the continued trouble and high end and how that both pertains to Benkei and Yamato. Outside of that, storyline advancement wise, not really anything worth noting. And when you look at the matches, they essentially ran back the opener on both nights. They actually, let me rephrase that. The only difference they had is they plugged in Shun for Hyo, and it was the exact same match. And that pretty much indicated the kind of weekend we had in Dragon Gate. Not bad, just not a lot that is worth going out of your way for.
Yeah, you get, like you said, Ben and Yamato and what's going on with high end. The rookies, Mochizuki Jr. and Ishinihashi, they continued their feud. They planted the seeds for KZ versus Skywalker, which Jay has that Shun Skywalker promo translated on his Twitter account, and you can kind of perhaps infer some changes that are coming, which we can talk about during the Q&A portion of this show, because I know somebody asked specifically about that feud. But other than that, you just kind of had some stuff, and we've seen better versions of the stuff that was on these shows.
Yeah, so on this week's program, we're going to get through and talk about the big picture stuff. And on a lot like how Fukuoka or Hokkaido, where they run those shows, 3 shows in 3 days, we'll go through the results. And if there's something really worth getting into, we will get into that. And then we'll move on to the questions and answer. First up was the Kobe Sambo Hall show for this month. It was on the 27th. It'll be up on the network until the 4th. And we open up that show on you, and this one's on YouTube. Natural Vibes versus Zebrats, KZ, Shimizu, Strong Machine J, and UT versus Kai, Shun, Skywalker, Diamante, and BB Hulk. It was the SSW by Shun Skywalker on UT to win it in 9 minutes 48 seconds. And it was a dry 9 minutes and 48 seconds, which was a shame for me at least.
Oh, we've certainly seen better Vibes versus Z-Brats matches. I mean, this is normally the combination of guys that I would go to deliver a really good match. There's a version of this match with these 8 guys that is, 4.25 instead of 3.25, but the reoccurring theme on these shows was that was good. It could have been better.
Yeah, and worth noting, prolonged crowd brawl number 1. We'll put a pin on that. We'll get back to that later on. Next up, we had the Royal
I do want to
Song.
note real quick. Sorry to cut you off. I do want to note real quick, just because we were talking about it, the post-match promo, and we'll circle back to this, but Jay says on Twitter, @DGJ, Shun, after the opener, asked the fans what do they think. He wants to think that no one out there supports KZ or Natural Vibes, but he accepts that there are stupid people who do. KZ is self-serving scum that is using Vibes to achieve his goals. KZ is worthless and needs to disappear from Dragon Gate Wrestling and the entire world. He needs to go, disappear, vanish. So put a pin in that.
Spicy thoughts from Shun Skywalker. There, we'll circle back to that in the Q&A. The Royal Sambo, it was 8 people, and thank God it was only 8 people. Naruki Doi, Genki Horiguchi, Konamae, Chikao, Asachi Hoko Boy, Takashi Yoshida, Problem Dragon, Mondai Ryu, Punch Tomonaga, and Ho-Ho Balloon. Essentially everyone you ever would expect to be in these matches, plus Naruki Doi getting some ring time, and he won the Royal Sambo with a Bakatari sliding kick after pulling Yoshida out on the apron, and this was very boring.
I like the finish. I don't think I've ever seen Doi hit a Bakatari sliding kick on the apron the way he did, but other than that, this was one of the lesser Royal Sambo Hall Battle Royals. That is something, Segunda Keita, the wrestling review site, I like those guys because although we have the same hobby, we could not go about it in more different ways. They once did a project where they were reviewing the All Japan Cork and Hall Battle Royals, and I feel like at some point we should just give them a Dragon Gate Network login and tell them to rank the Royal Sambo Battle Royals.
Well, it would be the whole entire Who Can Stop Konamawa Chikawa story.
God, that was such a great run. Never forget.
Never forget, and we are far, far away from that with this month's Royal Sambo. Match 3, the singles match on tonight's show, Eita versus Hio, heel versus heel, and we got just a crap load of healing. The finish was Eita with a inside cradle, and this was after he threw a ball of water at Mr. Nakazawa, who was like grabbing it, and then Eita grabbed his Paros bag, pulled over his head, did an inside cradle, and we had our second prolonged crowd brawl of the night. In 5 minutes, they squeezed it in there for us, guys.
Are you familiar with the tote bag girl internet trend?
I mean, I feel like here's the thing, like I feel like my generation brought back the knit tote bag, the the NPR style kind of thing, because I feel like my generation, or at least my era, the millennials, were like the first ones really to like live in a like, we'll charge you 10 cents for a plastic bag / you don't need a plastic bag, bring your own cloth bag kind of thing. So I don't know what it in particular referring to, but I lived through tote bag girl. So what's up?
Well, it's just there's a specific type of woman on TikTok mainly that her personality is based around carrying a tote bag. A young, typically white woman in their early 20s who lives in a big city, and their whole thing is that they're going to walk around the city looking cute carrying a tote bag. Eita very much has those vibes right now. His personality seems to be based on this Paris Del Mal de Japon tote bag that he's carrying. I was, if you go back to Kobe World, I was higher on the Hio versus SB Kento heel versus heel match than most were. I was okay with this. I will say I probably have a bigger issue with this match existing than I did the execution of it. I don't like the fact that Eita is the #1 contender for the Dream Gate, and he's challenging wrestling the current Brave Gate champion. This is the sort of stuff when we exited Cork and Hall earlier this month. This is what I talked about. These are the problems that I have with, although it makes business sense to have Eita wrestle for the Dreamgate belt, and I'm all for Eita having something to do. The problem is that he's in a position where he he has something to do, but he doesn't have a unit. And so he's in awkward matches like this. So while I actually thought the structure of the match was fine, I enjoy a short little match where people try to out heel one another. I have an issue with the match existing in the first place.
Yeah, I just looked at this. Like, the healing was fine. It just was like, what's the point of this match? I mean, having a singles match and Eita, I mean, if Nosawa and Kotaro Suzuki aren't around, he's unaffiliated here. And, this is the problem about having like your big stars being unaffiliated in Dragon Gate. We've seen this happen countless times that there's a reason why Kakuta needed to be added to D-Courage. You need to have people around them so you could actually book them in a way that makes sense and not have to be like, all right, so Eita and Hyo, we're just going to do nothing, which I have to say, I appreciate the work. They were definitely working out there, but it's just the fact that they booked themselves in the position that Eita has to kind of be pigeonholed in this position because, like, you can't do a lot about him. He's been in how many Eita singles matches have we had since he got kicked out of RADKs? It has to be at least televised. We have to be approaching double digits.
And his singles matches that are on the house shows more often than not make the YouTube uploads. I mean, if you look at the numbers this year between Dragon Gate and Noah, and the bulk of these have been in Dragon Gate, he's wrestled 20 singles matches this year, which
because they can't book him elsewhere.
Yeah, that's an alarmingly high rate, and you have to remember this is a guy who lost in the first round of King of Gate, so you can't even attribute 4 or 5 singles matches to him there. Even since Kobe World, this is his 5th singles match. He wrestled Kai on a house show. He wrestled KZ at Corkin. He wrestled Takashi Yoshida on a house show. He wrestled Strong Machine J on a house show. Now he's wrestled Hyo. It's the problem I have with this run. We saw last week they paired him with Takashi Yoshida, and I think we both were like, that's probably not the direction that we need to go here. But given the way the roster is laid out, I mean, look at who's unaffiliated. It's Yosuke, it's Shuji Kondo, it's Ryo Saito, Genki, Don Fuji, Yoshida, Tamanaga, and then you get to your bottom of the barrel jobbers. I mean, look, to your point about Kakuta, look at what him, not even being an official member of D-Courage, but just being an assistant, look at what that has done for him. All of a sudden, he feels like he has purpose and direction and momentum, and it's not that Eita doesn't, but I think in this company specifically, it really hurts when you don't have an army to go into battle with. I think one of the points that Jay makes a lot that I totally agree with when he talks about classic Dragon Gate is in 2005, when Magnum was doing both Do Fixer and Pos Hearts, something about Magnum's presence while he was in 2 units was just so off-putting. It just threw off the balance of the company. There's something weaved into the fabric of this promotion. It's one guy in a unit. There's not the one guy's not in 2 units, one guy's not in 0 units. It's a guy in a unit. And when you don't have that, for some reason, it just becomes so much harder to tell stories in this promotion.
Yeah, and it's sadly then not only is it hard to tell stories for you, you have to pull people from stories that are working perfectly fine because you have to do something with you. So Hyo, instead of setting up a Brave Gate challenger for Dangerous Gate, he's on Eita duty here, which I would argue doesn't do much good for setting up future Brave Gate matches either.
No, I would have rather seen Eita wrestle a rookie or even just get thrown into another random multi-man match because, again, I have an issue with just the existence of this match more so than the match.
Absolutely. Then we got into match for M3K at this weekend because Masaki Mochizuki finishing up N1 stuff. It was Susumu Mochizuki Jr. and Yasushi Kanda versus Ultimo Dragon, Suji Kondo, and Isha Nahashi, and it was Kondo with the King Kong Lariat on Kanda in 11 minutes and 36 seconds. And continuing on their feud, I mean, they get to have the fathers and sons tag match next week, and it's at a boiling part. They can't keep Ishin and Mochizuki Jr. apart. I mean, you can't have a ring introduction with these two guys, and you can't have them in the exit a match because you can't keep them apart. And GM Ryo Saito got to get his house in order after this week. Yeah,
this is good stuff. To me, this was the high point on the show. it's just, once again, I said this last week, but when I envisioned this M3K Triangle Gate run, I imagined there being a lot of protecting of Mochizuki Jr. I imagined Susumu Mochizuki and Masaki Mochizuki really doing the heavy lifting. I did not expect a month after World for Mochizuki to be as strong as he is, to look as good as he does. And I was just so delighted by this match. This was the high point on the show, and for me, probably the high point of the weekend.
Yeah, this one I felt like had a lot more life than the M3K versus Ultimo and Ishin match the next night. For me, though, we got a third prolonged crowd brawl and 3 straight normal matches case at this point. And we will get into the next match where there was chair throwing and almost crowd brawling as well. They basically, the effort wasn't bad, but when you have 3 straight matches with crowd brawls and not just like, oh, we're fighting around ringside case, every single person, that people in Kobe had to be tired of getting up at this point for people.
It was a rare lack of care. You don't normally see stuff like that overlap in Dragon Gate match after match after match. And yeah, again, this kind of had field day energy to it, where, they were doing something athletic, and it's not that nobody was trying, but it also, there's field day effort and there's state championship level effort, and they were not playing in the state championship here. This was a pretty laissez-faire attitude throughout these 2 shows.
Yeah, and it was something that, well, we talked about this over the last few weeks. Ishin and Mochizuki Jr., really providing the little bit of sparkle life with it. And I think that that's really just a lot of fun to have with this. And it really, after the first 3 matches kind of slept walk through the show, it was very much needed. And we got some more life in the next match case. High-end Yamato and Kagetora versus unaffiliated Don Fuji and Ryo Fuda, because when you get Don Fuji and Yamato, they're going to brawl as well. So we got to have a little bit more life here, even though it was of the chair throwing variety.
Look, there's no bad match that involves Yamato and Don Fuji, and when you throw in a rookie into the mix, it is a damn good combination. This was another match that, again, too similar to what we had seen, but not bad all around.
Yeah, and it was something that, like, Fuda had a very strong weekend. I think that's fair to say. Like, he was not really, we didn't get a chance to really talk about him last week other than, oh yeah, Ryo Fuda, as well as really showing up there. I think that between this and Nara, yeah, the Ishin and Junior stuff's been great, and the stuff with High End has worked as well. But I think Ryo Fuda had as strong of a weekend as anyone in the company.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him on that Ishin Mochizuki Jr. level, but it is exactly what I want to see from a guy like Fuda. He needs those reps, he needs those strong matches, and I thought this weekend provided that.
Okay, let me rephrase that into a way you might agree with us more. He was one of the few people I could tell was putting in full effort all weekend.
Bingo.
There we go. I knew we'd reach in the middle. After this, we had Kota Minoura come out and invite Yamato to join Gold Class.
What are your thoughts here, Mike?
I mean, I like the fact that, like, with all the Ben stuff, we also have Yamato happening at the same time. So one of these we'll take. And I think it's smart, like, having 2 going at the same time so you can kind of swerve people around. So I like it in that aspect. Yamato and Doi and Minoura, though, I feel like that's in a way saying the Kota Minoura project is set back for 6 months.
I was just thinking, could you imagine pitching me specifically Yamato, Doi, and Minoura 6 months ago? Boom, no. 3-headed dragon, 3 big draws. Here we go, main event unit.
Right, yeah, but like, with how High End is, they're wrapping up High End, and I feel like that whatever's happening with Shun and Natural Vibes and KZ, that's its own thing. So I think that's its own distinct thing, but they have to take care of these 3 and 4 people units here. But Doi and bringing back Doyama this would not be a bad time to pull that trigger if they really want to do that. But then again, that's using taking more time that you might have left with Naruki Doi as well. it's interesting. It's something that did not even cross my mind until it happened.
Let's talk about that briefly because in the same way that we were just talking about kind of the complex nature of Dragon Gate storytelling and the way that units are obviously the way that this company is organized, but it also is just so integral to the promotion and how it feels and how stories are told. Nostalgia is something that has gone a few different ways in this promotion. You obviously have all of the M2K offshoots, some of which have been very successful, some of which have not. You also have things like Kinesco returning in 2015. And for as great as the original pairing was, the 2015 version, they were pushed and they were successful. And it's not that they were bad, but they didn't hit the same way. And I wonder if running Yamato and Doi back this time in gold tights instead of red, representing baby faces instead of heels, if that would hit the same way. Because in ring, we're talking about, just based off of output alone, the law of averages, one of the better tag teams, at least in modern wrestling. But I don't know if it would hit the same if they were under the gold class banner.
And you're basically, by doing this kind of thing, like Yamato was probably not going to have a Dreamgate run, for the foreseeable future. But in a lot of ways, it's saying if Naruki Doi is getting another Dreamgate run, it's way off in the distance future. Like, this is, in a way, I think, like, re-gears how you look at Naruki Doi, who's someone that's started to collect injuries, taking him out of the ring a little bit. It makes me wonder if this is something that's like, hey, I can do tag team wrestling and trios wrestling just fine, but maybe not the big singles matches. And it could be prolonging in a way.
And we've hit a point in Doi's career where that's all that he needs to do. I mean, quite frankly, he doesn't need to do anything. He could retire tomorrow and he would be respected and adored. But we got through that 2019-2020 Naruki Doi Dreamgate run, and there's no spot for him at the top of the card anymore. I mean, we could go through a few more injuries or excursions or jumps to GLEAT or whatever. There's still a few guys that are going to be higher up on the pecking order than Doi at this point. I think his reputation is that of a legend, and that's rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't look at him as a modern day main eventer at this point.
He is a if emergency break glass main eventer now.
Yeah, if they book him versus Yoshioka, great. I think it's going to be a great win for Yoshioka. Now, granted, 3 years ago, I said that about Ben K, and we know how that worked out. But my God, if Naruki Doi beats Yuki Yoshioka, then I owe Nozawa some apology. So I think we're safe. I don't think that's going to happen. But nevertheless, I think Doi, injuries or not, has just entered a phase in his career where those big-time singles matches are no more. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head, was Doi in King of Gate this year?
Was Doi in King of Gate? That is wild now. That I can't even... Yes, he was. He was in King of Gate because he wrestled BB Hulk in Hokkaido.
That's why I don't remember it.
Yeah.
That match was good. It's just that was the third day of Hokkaido, or maybe the first day, actually. It was Hokkaido. Those all blend together.
You start seeing the soccer nets case, and your mind goes a little fray. But it's something that, like, I just kind of like look at that, and it's something that when you look at high end, like, there's no triaging the unit at this point. Like, it's something that, which is a statement that, for given the status of those four guys, it's just something that's just like, just take care of it. And I like the way that they can do this in a way that does not necessarily have three guys looking like idiots. If it's something that's like, oh yeah, Benkei has been this loose cannon forever now, and he's gone, that's fine, and maybe the three do one thing. Or if it's Benkei was actually faithful, but Naruki Doi gave Yamato an offer he couldn't refuse. I think those are both like ways that does not completely make people look like goose, and it doesn't hurt people long term. I think this is like the right way to get out of it.
By January 1st, 2023, do you think there's a chance between high-end, gold class, and natural vibes that 2 out of those 3 units no longer exist?
I think that the over-under is 1.5. So that's right on it. I think it's probably a little bit less than 50% chance that 2 of the 3 are gone.
So you'll take the under on that.
Yeah, I'll take the under, I think. Yeah.
I'll take the over. I'll explain why later.
Okay. So after that, we had, I accidentally turned the page. We had from Gold Class, Kota Minoura and Minorita versus High End, Dragon Kid, and Benkei. It was Ben with the spear on Minorita in 10 minutes and 28 seconds. And we had more Benkei being a delightful weirdo afterward.
Ben looked good. Another good Benkei match. That's all I have to say about this.
Yeah. This was fun. This was something that I like the Minoria team, and I'm intrigued to see, like, with everything happening with High End and Gold Class, what that next step will be for the Minorita character. It's something that I feel like that he's taking the ball and run with it. I hope that it's only good things that could come for Minorita. The main event for Kobe Sambo Hall was the Kobe Kung Fu Fighters. Jason Lee, Jackie Funky Kamei, and Super Shenlong III versus D Courage and Kakuta, Yuki Yoshioka, Dragon Dia, and Madoka Kakuta. Madoka Kakuta pinned Super Shenlong in 15 minutes and 2 seconds with his new snap pile driver. Case, how do you feel about Madoka Kakuta's snap pile driver? Because I'm still trying to get my sea legs under me with this as his new finish.
You know, I think about how Matt Hardy, for all of the trials and tribulations that he's been through, one of his biggest regrets in wrestling is that he did the leg drop off of the middle rope for as long as he did. You know, you think about Hogan's hips, you think about the bad shape that Matt Hardy's in, all because of a leg drop. Although a pile driver is not the same, you are falling onto the same part of your body. And say what you will about Matt Hardy, say what you will about Hulk Hogan, they do not have the ass that Madoka Kakuta has. When he is dropping somebody on their head and at the same time giving himself the cushiest landing imaginable. I am all for this snap pile driver.
The problem is, I think he has too much cushion for to make this a believable finish. You know,
his ass is hitting the ground before his opponent's head. That's a first in wrestling. You know, we talk about how innovative this company is. We haven't had an ass-related pile driver issue before.
It's something that, like, I noticed that in this match, and then also in Nara, I was like, wow, snap pile driver, I get it. It makes sense. Gotta work on something with this, because each time he's going cheek first, not the crown of the skull.
I did not notice that. It worked for me. But boy, would I love to be the road agent that has to pull him aside, you know, before Osaka and Cork and Hall this upcoming week. Hey, man, so, you know, we were looking at the tape. And your ass is too big to do a pile driver. So get a new finish, kid.
Yeah, that hand of God lariat, just go back.
Yeah, I mean, I would for my own well-being. I mean, I was, you know, kind of marveling in this match. It's so weird because Kakuta went away for as long as he did, and Kamei, although the core of that character has been the same for so long, he's gone through a number of changes since his debut. And it hit me watching this like, oh, that's right. They're from the same class. These guys were in the dojo together. No wonder they have such good chemistry. And given what Kamei's specialty is in taking a beating, and given what Kakuta's capable of doing, which is hitting guys really, really hard, sometimes with that lariat, sometimes with that nice two-handed chop that he's been doing, that to me stood out more than anything, was that Kakuta and Kamei have really, really strong chemistry with one another.
I've been liking the chemistry that Kakuta started to form with the D-Courage boys.
Oh, 100%. No, this has been, through 1 month of him being their assistant, this has been a winning combination. I'm very glad. I would have liked for him to have joined D-Courage full on, but so far I think this experiment has been a win.
Yeah, it's something that, especially in the closing stretch in this case, with Yoshioka and him, like, the way that they were doing this is like, oh, now we have like someone that Dia can flip off of, and I'm like, oh, this could be a lot of fun now that they're starting to work together and starting to gel. Like, I'm really excited about just the prospect of these three guys together. I feel like that there's a lot to really go on there, and if you think about it, like, there really was not as much of an opportunity for Kakuta to work with these two, given of course, Yoshioka going on excursion, Dia, and then the shoulder injury. So it's cool to see this with this like new tandem that not even like an official group. It's nice to see all three guys look like they're coming out of this pretty strong, and especially considering that after the match, there was a Twin Gate challenge of the team that is the name. I don't know how I feel about the name case because there's a lot of cusses in this. There's a cuss in this, and I don't know how I feel about this.
Well, the wonderful duo of D-ass, as Jay put it.
The ass, right?
That's good stuff.
And Jackie Funky May was all forced because he was looking at Kakuta's butt and complimenting us. Actual thing that happened there. However, Benkei was interrupted. Benkei just swaggering out there, not seeming like he understands tag team wrestling, and he wants a shot as well. Everyone had explained to someone who was a multiple time Open the Twin Gate champion how tag teams work. And in the end, he decides that, okay, I'll have to team with someone. I'm teaming with Yamato. So on the 4th in Osaka Ideon Arena, number 2, D-Ass versus Benkei and Yamato, with the winners facing Kung Fu Masters at their pop-up shop at Dangerous Gate, because Jackie Funky Kamei decided that, hey, we shouldn't keep this thing in Kobe anymore.
I think no matter what, this is a winning situation. If Kakuta and Daya challenge for the Twin Gate belts, I think that's super interesting because of Kakuta's place on the roster, and also because that's going to be a great match. If it's Ben and Yamato versus Jason and Kamei, I think that's a super interesting match. It'll be fun to watch Yamato against those guys because, you know, for most of their time in Dragon Gate, Yamato's been positioned a little bit higher than them, and Ben's obviously doing the work that he's doing right now. Both of those possible matches are super exciting, and I think the number 1 contendership match will be great too.
Yeah, and you have the two guys who are at the forefront of this high-end chaos, and you know they like doing stuff happening. Like, okay, we're not going to do a show between now and Osaka. Who do you think's winning this number 1 contendership match?
I think it's going to be Ben and Yamato.
Yeah, that's kind of what I came to, because they like doing turns at Dangerous Gate.
Well, so let's look ahead of the schedule real quick, because
not a lot in September.
No, so they can win in Osaka, they can challenge at Dangerous Gate, which is what they'll do if they'll win, and then
there's the Corkin before it, but they'll just that's the preview match.
But if they win the number 1 contendership match, they'll challenge for the belts. I mean, what they do in between doesn't matter there.
Yeah,
and then coming out of that Dangerous Gate, there's a Kobe Sambo Hall show that week. I think High End will win the number 1 contendership match. I think they'll lose the title match, and then I think you do Ben turning on Yamato, whether it's September 23rd in Kobe, October 6th in Corkin, or, you know, even one of the double shot Kobe shows they have in October on the 15th and the 16th. Well, Yamato's in America, so they can't do it then. You know what they're going to do? They'll probably have Ben turn on Yamato on the 6th, write Yamato off for a little bit when he goes to America, and then they'll come back and do Ben versus Yoshioka at Gate of Destiny.
Okay, I like your logic there. I like your logic there. Like, I still think that they might pull the trigger a little sooner, but it makes a lot of sense with excursions and all of that.
Not an excursion. He's a 5-time Dream Gate champion, Mike. How dare you?
Sorry. How dare me of all people? I only wrote 3,000 words about that.
But I still think it's going to be Ben versus Yoshioka at Gate of Destiny. I think they have to get through this Twin Gate match for Ben to be justified turning on Yamato. God, it's going to be fascinating if Jackie pins Yamato or if Jason pins Yamato. That is... Okay, I'm suddenly so into this. My bad being a broadcaster, I hadn't put a ton of thought into this. If it's just Dai and Kakuta versus the Kung Fu Masters, that's a great match. And it's interesting with Kakuta not being in the unit and that dynamic there. But if they do Ben and Yamato versus the Kung Fu Masters, they can potentially set up 2 or 3 months of story out of that. And I hope that they don't do, at least for one of these guys, whether it's Skywalker or Yamato or even Ben, it just seems to have that one random West Coast Pro appearance. I mean, we talked a few months ago, we were the first people to report that Shun Skywalker was coming to America. We had Yamato. We didn't have a chance to break it by the time that went public. The Ben West Coast Pro appearance, I know nothing about. I don't know how long he's in America. I don't know if anybody else has booked him. He is just on that one random West Coast Pro show, and that is it. But I hope that for one of these guys that go to America, they do an angle to send them away instead of just doing what they did with SB Kento and just wishing him best of luck in his Mexican endeavors, because that still bothers me.
I mean, I think Ben decides he needs to go to NorCal too. He's gonna get into the hyphy life and the battle rap. Like that's his justification there. We don't even need to have a match case. I just gave you the reason.
I think there's a lot here. I'm suddenly way into this.
Bay Life Benkei. There we go. I don't really have anything else to add on to Kobe Sambo Hall, so let's get into Nara. Nara, in a lot of ways, was a mirror of Kobe Sambo Hall. It'll be up until the 4th opener, talking about mirror matches. Z-Brats versus Natural Vibes. Kai, Hulk, Hyo, Diamante versus KZ, Shimizu, Jason, and Strong Machine J. Diamante got the big guy up for a big powerbomb in 11 minutes and 55 seconds. But my first thought was, I forgot how weird this venue is on stream.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching this show this afternoon, and I was in the Voices of Wrestling Slack, and somebody posted a picture of themselves watching this show. It was our friend Griffin, and he mentioned that it was like they were wrestling in the void, and I hadn't realized that until it was framed like that, and then that was all I saw for the rest of the show.
So Nara Centennial Hall is like a real theater. It's not like one of those things like across Fukuoka where it looks like, oh, it's like a nice little black box. This is like a real theater that they put the ring on the stage, the entrance is there, a couple rows of seats, and when you start off with Natural Vibes doing a dance from the back and everyone coming through, and you're just like, wow, okay, you're going to see your hometown hero Naruki Doi, and you are about 500 feet.
It is the equivalent of like a college auditorium like Dragon Gate USA ran in New Orleans on their final shows, where they put the ring on the stage, which I guess that's what they have to do. I don't know. These venues are always strange. I kind of thought it looked nice on camera until I realized that it was just a black background behind me. And then from that point on, I was pretty distracted. But I thought the atmosphere was lively.
Yeah, no, the Nara crowd really got into it, and especially on this next match, special singles match, Shun Skywalker versus Ryu Fuda. It was Shun Skywalker pinning Ryu Fuda with a German suplex hold that was the most slid out insane bridge I've seen in like 5 years. Like Shun Skywalker has some flexibility.
I couldn't believe this match went 10 minutes. I kind of just expected Shun to roll right over him. What do you make of that?
I loved it. I loved this match. This was my favorite match of the weekend, guys. I liked because I thought that Fuda really was like, this was not like the rookies and vets match. This was Fuda going like, all right, I'm put in this situation here, and Shun was like, the crowd was audibly cheering for Fuda getting near falls and kickouts by the end of it. This could have been a match that they might have planned for like 6 minutes, and they felt the vibe and kept on going. I thought this was my favorite match of the weekend. I still have it like at 3.5 stars, but I thought that Fuda really had a big step forward with this match. I really like, this was a performance from Fuda that I've been waiting for since he debuted.
I was gonna say, it's probably the most important Fuda match we've seen since his debut, because we saw a different gear from him. We saw something that we hadn't seen. He hasn't really had a drawn out 10-minute match before. You know, it's either been go, 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 or it's been super hard hitting, Akuda versus Fuda style or Fuji versus Fuda style. This was something different. This was a pretty standard house style singles match. I'm not as high on it as you were. I thought Fuda held his own. I thought Shun, once again, best wrestler in the world not named Will Ospreay. And unfortunately, Ospreay has widened that gap in recent weeks. I don't know if you pay attention to the news much, but Will Ospreay's had a pretty good August. Shun's coming off a 5-star match at the end of July, but it is the sheer magnitude of what Ospreay's done has been insane. But this was a really fun match. I think I looked at it as more of an important match for Fuda than I did a good match for Fuda, but it wasn't bad by any means.
it was something that, like, yeah, as you were saying, like, this was not like like a beatdown match. This was him trying to like really like stick in there and showing and fleshing out like parts of his moveset that we haven't seen. Like, we haven't really like seen like Fuda go into a stretch where like they're trading roll ups. Like, that just hasn't been something we've seen out of him. But I have to say, him coming back over the last month, it's been Fuda was someone that I was not certain about like over the spring, but coming back from his injury, especially since Kobe World, I've been really impressed, and I thought the post-match angle was really kind of cool as well. So afterwards, Fuda was completely wiped out. Shun basically rolls him so his head is draped over on the apron. He takes a step back, does a full sprint, high kicks him while he's on the apron, and just walks away, and they have to drag Fuda to the back.
5 stars, no notes.
Perfect, right? Like he just was like one of those things. Like, of course, Shun Skywalker does this. He's a madman. He wants to kick this guy in the head after.
Yeah, no, this was all great stuff from start to finish. It's why I love Shun. It's why I love the rookies. Even if I wasn't as high on it as you were, I still thought this was a big win.
Absolutely. Match 3: Sachi Hokoboy and Shuchi Kondo versus Dragon Kid and Matoka Kakuta. Kakuta pinned Sachi Hokoboy in 9 minutes and 20 seconds. We got more Sachi this weekend than we usually do, and I'm matching that with T2P right there. Get someone that was one of Doi's classmates out on tour instead of just his usual appearances.
You know, Mike, we're about to enter a 4-match stretch here. And we've been doing this show weekly for 2.5 years. We've done countless hours of audio together. We've done throwback shows. We've done current shows. We've predicted the future. I don't know if I've ever had less thoughts on 4 matches than I do these upcoming 4 matches. This was fun. I enjoy Sachi Hokoboy whenever I see him. I pop for the pile driver, even if Kakuta went ass first instead of head first. Good stuff. On to the next match.
Next match, M3K versus Ultimo Ishin and Genki Horiguchi with Susumu over Horiguchi with the Yokosuka Cutter in 10 minutes and 40 seconds. We got to see more Ishin stuff, and I like Ishin's diving shoulder tackle. That was kind of neat.
Probably the weaker of the Mochizuki Jr. versus Ishin multi-mans that we've seen, but another fine match. 3 stars from me.
And then we had D Courage versus Young Vibes, Yoshioka, and Daya versus UT and Kamei. It was Yoshioka over UT with a frog splash in 13 minutes and 6 seconds.
Yeah, that's this was a fun match actually. I'm gonna speed through these, but I enjoyed this. D Courage has become a really well-oiled machine. You know, we saw them get out of the gates hot. We saw the potential there. 6 months after formation, or really 8 months after formation, we're seeing the work pay off. This is a well-oiled tag team. I would love for them at some point, if the Dragon Gate continues to internationally expand, I would love to see these 2 guys go to America together. And although the tag team pool isn't big really at all on the US Indies, I would like to see what they can do. I think them together could really blow some minds, and Kamei and UT together as well. This was a win. I wish this happened on another show. I would be more fired up about it because this was very good. It just did happen on this goddamn Nara show, and by this point, I was struggling to pay attention.
Yeah, this was a high-end Summer Adventure Tag League match. Like,
great comp, yes.
Yeah, it was a very solid 3.5 stars. You know, you watch this match and you're like, yep, this was exactly one out of it. The only like other question I had was, it was something that I had in the back of my mind when Kung Fu Masters have formed. Kamei is firmly passed by UT at this point in the unit, right?
In terms of who's ranked higher, Kamei is more important?
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's something that like I always figured that would happen. I just didn't know if it was going to be a year and a half or 2 years for him. But it was just something that like, I noticed. It was like, oh, UT ate the fall, and UT was the one who was taking all the beating in this match. I was like, wow, okay, there you go, Turtle Chan. You've moving on up in line.
I think it's largely been that way since last October with the first SB Kento versus Kamei match. I think that was the moment where Kamei really earned his stripes, and you know, we saw a certain level of upward mobility there that just given UT's age and how long he's been, you know, he debuted 9 years ago today as we're recording. It's not there for UT, it's there for Kamei, and I think that's when Kamei passed him.
Yeah, no, I think you're dead on. Like that really was the big move there. It just was something that was kind of as a UT fan, even though I love Kamei just as much, it was just kind of like, oh, now got to readjust now. Whenever I see UT and Kamei in a match, now I know for sure who's taking the fall of those two.
For sure.
Main event in Nara features gold classes. It has to. Naruki Doi, Kota Minoura, and Minorita versus High-End Yamato, Benkei, and Kakatora. It was Naruki Doi penning Kakatora with a Bakatari sliding kick in 16 minutes, and Naruki Doi was not very featured in his home.
No, I think Doi's banged up.
Yeah.
There's a reason he worked the Battle Royal the night before. There's a reason he took it easy in this match. I don't know what the future of Gold Class holds. I get the feeling Gold Class might move on without Naruki Doi because he is not moving around very well right now.
Yeah, and it's something that, he's really kind of over the last few years, he's had stints, and I mean, he's not someone that was who had the healthiest injury history before. Like, I mean, he was someone that almost had his neck broken, famously in Dragon Gate. So, it's time. It's agent's time. And I know that for Doi, having Doi headline in Nara was important, and they got that, and they got to have Naruki Doi opening the show and Naruki Doi closing the show, and that was the goal of the weekend. And hopefully now Doi can take whatever rest he needs and recuperate, because I think it's time that Minoura and Minorita got to move on, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I like the direction they're going with just mixing Yamato into the fold. I think that's interesting. So we'll see where they go in the near future, because I think we'll get answers sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. In case I'm going to give the wheel to you for the remainder of the show, because I have not seen many of these. I know that you have. We have a bit of a mailbag to flesh out the remainder of the show this week.
Yeah, we do. So let's start with Twitter here. At Open Voice Gate on Twitter, we got questions in the Discord and questions on Twitter. And the topic of today, something that I've seen a lot of buzz about. It's our first question from @ShutUpPatrick. Do you think that any other U.S. promotions will pin deals with the network like Chicagoland Pro Wrestling or Championship Wrestling, whatever they're called, has now done with Dragon Gate?
Well, first off, Case, this Chicagoland Championship, like, I didn't know this company existed up until this announcement. Case, you live in Chicago. Did you know this company existed?
No, Mike, I don't know about Chicagoland Championship Wrestling because they run wrestling shows in Michigan City, Indiana. And as somebody whose job is literally marketing in Chicagoland, I don't even know if I would call Michigan City Chicagoland. So
it's a promotion. Hold up. It's a promotion that's called Chicagoland Wrestling. They're based in Indiana, which, I know there's parts of Greater Chicagoland, Indiana, but they are running in Michigan City,
which is in Indiana. So if you're European, you must be absolutely fucking flabbergasted by this.
That's why I'm looking out for our friends out there, because it's purely preposterous. It's completely preposterous. Euros, you're absolutely right. Case and I, we agree with this. That's why we're making fun of it.
So Chicagoland Championship Wrestling is in Indiana, in a town called Michigan City, Indiana. They announced today at 9:12 a.m. They said, attention #wrestling Twitter. Good start. With the amazing talent from Dragon Gate in Japan making their debuts at Chicago Championship Wrestling #the return, we will be filming matches that will air on Dragon Gate Network worldwide in Gaora Fight in Japan.
Well, it sounds like that they want to have footage of the guys wrestling, and this was the place that they could do it.
I guess look. They're running Yamato at the very least. God, I hope Shun Skywalker as well. But Yamato's going to be in AAW. They, although I don't love their booking as of late, have really nice cameras. I get the feeling Chicagoland Championship Wrestling might not shoot in HD.
Yeah, and I don't mean to besmirch Chicagoland Championship Wrestling on their big day. I mean, and I'm trying not to sound snarky as I said that, but it's something that Dragon Gate in the past have had some really kind of weird like promotional parts. Like they would like the whole entire Hawaii thing was kind of different. And when they were based in California, or when people are based in California, they're not based like where you think they're based at. Like, and people in San Antonio, it's like for like older Dragon Gate fans, it's like, oh yeah, no, they found Chicagoland Championship Wrestling. It's like, well, sure, okay, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Like, I don't think that this is going to be the success that I think, at least for the network, that it could be if the you know, I have you looked at this promotion case?
Let's backtrack a little bit. I don't think we insulted them, so I don't feel the need to apologize.
I want to be clear that I'm not if anything I'm saying, I don't mean any malice behind it.
But let's look at glass half full here, because first of all,
Right.
they have 2 shows on the High Spots Wrestling Network. They're shot well. Now, I will say, whatever venue they're in, this is a tiny venue, but they're in a venue with lights, with nice cameras, and this is a promotion that booked Yuya Uemura and now booked Dragon Gate guys. And you and I complain all the time that indie promoters don't know what's up, they're not paying attention, they don't know who these guys are. If they've booked Uemura and they booked Dragon Gate and they had the foresight to come up with some sort of deal to put these shows on the network, bravo to them. It's insane they call themselves Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, but until they prove me wrong, I am a fan of this promotion.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it'll be interesting, and I will take interesting and ponderous things sometimes over a good case. So I'm interested to see how this goes, and I think that it's something that, hey, for Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, not on a lot of people's radars up until this morning, now suddenly on more radars, I would argue. So it's already a win in their books, I would say.
Yeah, you know, I think I approached that with the wrong tone at first. Good for them. I hope this works out. I don't know who they've booked so far. I don't have any of that info, but we will see. And I am going to try to talk Rich Craich into a road trip.
Oh, I think you got to. I mean, if he didn't go with you to see Ultimo and to see you get hustled by Ultimo, he has to go to Michigan City and Indiana for Chicagoland Championship Wrestling.
This is such a tiny venue. This is like, and this is a very niche reference, but you know the band Turnstile. Do you know the band Turnstile, Mike?
I'm aware.
Okay, Turnstile started off just another hardcore band, very popular, but you know, a hardcore band. And over the past year, they've exploded in popularity. The music industry has started to pay attention to them. And last month, I saw them one night at Lollapalooza on a pretty big stage. The next night, I saw them in a venue that housed 300 people. I would go see Dragon Gate guys in whatever this venue Chicagoland Championship Wrestling runs in, because this is a tiny venue, and even compared to like the Logan Square Auditorium in Chicago, this is much, much smaller. So I could see that being a pretty cool atmosphere.
Yeah, it's something that I saw that they build themselves as studio wrestling, and that is something that I think actually fits the Dragon Gate vibe very well. You know, like
completely.
If you like really like think about it, and especially like if you look at like Prime Zone, like they basically were booking small room studio wrestling. So it's something that I think that is a skill. Like that is something that actually Naruki Doi, if he's hurt, I'm bummed about, because I feel like Naruki Doi would get a kick out of doing studio wrestling.
Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, if you're listening, book UT versus Super Shisa in Michigan City, Indiana. That is extremely my shit. Please make that happen.
Oh man, now we can't. I just realized we can't propose that match as, hey, fly out the Dragon Gate guys for that.
No, it's that is a that's like PWG when they used to book a Ring of Honor versus Dragon Gate USA guys. This is right. Dragon Gate versus Shima's Friends, which is a very interesting position to be in. Did you watch the Gleek Corkin show?
Not yet. Just not. It just was something that it's on my list. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Like I told you, watch the tag title match, watch the main event. Lindemann, for me, top 10 wrestler in the world this year. I know I came on this podcast a few weeks ago and I was like, God, wrestling outside of Dragon Gate and AEW right now is just not doing it for me. And then I realized, oh, at the end of the year, I vote in a poll for the 50 best wrestlers in the world, all promotions included. I should probably get back on track. So I did a big Noah catch up over the weekend. I caught up on Gleet. Lindemann is having a phenomenal year, and I think you will very much enjoy that tag title match.
Yeah, it looked like it was extremely up my alley, and that was something I was going to be into. It's just, with me in this week and with like my next few months, it's like, okay, Gleet, I know will always be on YouTube. I can go back.
Our friend Lorenzo checked in, and he said, knowing what we know of Shun's touring schedule, where do you see the feud with him and KZ going, and what's Hyo's role in all of it?
Yeah, Hyo's the only champion in Z-Brats, and he's the one doing almost all the talking like we expected. I just don't. Like this is like the one that like with Shun, since it was like always like explained, or the way it was presented to me at the time was it like Shun is going to be like 2 months and that's it. Like he's literally doing a vacation with it. So I don't know how you really tie it in. I know, Case, you want to see like it's like okay, he either like scampers away like gleefully running away from his destruction, or he gets run off. Like how are you thinking that this kind of plays into it? Because I don't have a feeling.
I think they're two unrelated things. You're exactly right. Shun's going on vacation. He's going to be gone a little bit in September and all of October, I believe, and that's going to be it. He's there. My assumption, and I don't report this as fact, but my assumption is that he had a weird excursion. He was supposed to be an MLW guy in 2020. That got taken away from him. I think he wants to tour the world a little bit. He's had he was supposed to have 2 opportunities with WrestleMania weekend 2019 and then his excursion in 2020. Neither of those happened. I don't know if make good is the right terminology, but I think this is a guy who just wants to wrestle outside of Japan, and he's doing that. As for the feud with KZ, I thought it was extremely interesting that Kamei and Jason and the rest of the Kung Fu Masters are opening what they're calling a pop-up shop in Tokyo. And it makes me wonder if we are approaching the end of Natural Vibes. If the Kung Fu Masters, as they are right now, are going to be a full-time unit. If they find so much success outside of Kobe that they realize the buck can't stop here, they can't just team once a month. They have to go all around the country and spread their message. I think they can do that in a successful way because Natural Vibes could end at the hands of Hyo. Who better to end a unit in a unit disbands match than Hyo? And how heated would a Z-Brats versus Vibes unit disbands match be in Tokyo Korakuen Hall?
Yeah, like that's the thing about this is like the problem with high end and gold class is that there's just too little members to do like a proper disbands. Like high end, you could do 4-on-4 and you could do it that way, but a trios disband match just feels pathetic. Like so like if you want to have like a disbands match happening, it has to be Natural Vibes. And what a Dragon Gate like pump fake it is, like all this big third chapter new dance. They did the big refresh after Ginki and Susumu left it dead or alive for them to be vanquished less than 4 months later. Like that would be such a Dragon Gate thing. So that thought was put in my mind before you brought that up, Case. Like because I jumped to that as well because just like looking at the battlefield, like that's the only way you could really do a disbands match right now, right?
Yeah, you could. I mean, I would love to see Kai, Hulk, Hyo, Shun, and Diamante against KZ, Shimizu, UT, in some combination of Jason, Jackie, and Strong Machine J. I don't know how that all shakes out, but yeah, it'd be excellent. And I have said for a while now, I wouldn't touch Vibes. I just think everything's Vibes is doing is working so well. But if you have a natural funnel for Jason and Jackie to go into, all of a sudden I'm open to the idea of shaking things up. I think most people would agree that KZ needs a bit of a shakeup, that weirdly Vibes 2 and 3.0 have probably been less beneficial for him than anybody else, which is strange. You think about the stability it's given UT, the rise of UT and Jackie, the continued progression of Jason, the just abundance of talent that we've seen burst out at the seams at Strong Machine J. And if you think about KZ's last 18 months, he's been pretty good. He's had some good matches. He headlined a Kobe World. He lost, but he headlined a Kobe World. But last 12 months, kind of been a guy on the roster for the most part. It's weird that Vibes has benefited him less than anybody else. I would say that's a positive, but it might be time for another shakeup. We're going to approach 2 years of Vibes reforming in January of next year. It's not a bad idea to look ahead towards the future and think about shaking things up.
Yeah, and it's something that if you're already having to deal with two babyface units that you need to deal with, figure out what to do with, you might as well like look at the full slate when you have D Courage already there propping up the babyface end. Like you might actually have the opportunity to play around with that. Like, I get it.
Yeah, I completely agree. So as we continue into our Twitter foray of the Q&A, Mike, there's a man going around Mexico right now with a mask on. Of course, I can't pronounce his new gimmick name, but do you know who I'm referring to? Yes, Hanya. What are your thoughts on this? We were simply asked thoughts on the mysterious Hanya.
I think that it is good for who. Gosh, I'm trying to think of a smart way to say this kayfabe wise, but I can't.
Well, we're not doing the Chikara retrospective podcast. You can unmask guys if you need to.
Yeah, it's Fujiwara. I think that since Fujiwara can't get a visa at this moment, or it was not in that visa batch, him having a mask lets him get more work in Mexico, frankly. It'll be easier to have like a random mask guy than someone, a non-native, because like with how Lucha books, like then it's like, oh, we're going to like an international matches. You get pigeonholed that way with how Lucha can be at times. So him being masked makes sense, trying to get him as much work as possible.
Yeah, that's exactly my read on it. I just think it's a way to get him booked on more shows. I hope, and this is where Dragon Gate and I sometimes don't always agree, I hope this is just a thing that is in Mexico and stays in Mexico. I don't have any interest in seeing him. I don't have any interest in seeing him work in Japan under a name that isn't Takuma Fujiwara. To me, that's a main event name. That's a recognizable name. There's no reason for him to shift to anything else, even an SB Kento or, an L. Lindemann to go back in time. Takuma Fujiwara should be his name. His look shouldn't change that much. I think it's great that he's working under a mask in Mexico, but I hope it stays in Mexico.
Yeah, it's something that, like, I wouldn't bring him back mask. Like, I don't think you would, because you did the whole angle with Yuki Yoshioka too. Like that's still in the front of people's brain.
Yeah, completely. So I'm for it, just for getting more bookings, but
right.
that is where I hope it stays. Let's move over to the Discord. A few questions in here. Paul asked, during the last End of the Decade episode, you and Mike said that you thought the 2029 Kobe World main event would be Shun Skywalker versus Benkei. Do you still think this, or are you sure it's not going to be SBK versus the aforementioned Akuma Fujiwara?
When did we do that episode? Did we actually do that episode like in 2020?
We did a December 2020 episode where I asked you 10 years from now, what's the Kobe World main event? Okay,
well, like here's the thing. My memory about what I say on shows when they happen is not the best, so I need to have a frame of reference for it. I think that Takuma Fujiwara and SBK feels like it's an inevitability, but I think there's a window for Shun Skywalker and Benkei with their ages and just how things are going that I would suspect to still see Benkei and Shun Skywalker happen before the other still.
If you look ahead to 2029, Ben and Shun will be in the 13th year of their career. That's no different than Shima being Dreamgate champion in that 2011, 2012, 2013 range, which he was. Obviously, if you're Fujiwara and SB Kento, you're approaching a decade into Dragon Gate at this point. Again, very much fits the time frame of when you would expect people to headline Kobe World. I think both are very realistic possibilities. I can't lean one way or another at this point. Obviously, predicting something 10 years from now is a fun exercise, albeit an insane one. But I think both are very realistic possibilities.
Yeah, I don't think that things have changed so drastically for that. And like the fact of the matter is that like Takuma Fujiwara in 2029 will still not be 30 still. So like I still think like Ben being older and like Shun, like they're going to want to pay that off sooner.
We were asked by a few different people if Dragon Gate USA was to come back, what wrestlers from the indies would you want to be involved in the promotion? I have a list of 5 independent wrestlers. Would you like me to go first because this is a list form?
Yeah, you go ahead. Well, I didn't see these questions. I have a couple names, but you have a more codified list, so go ahead.
I'll give you 5. Give me your thoughts on my 5, and then I'll have you give your list if you have one. For me, Titus Alexander, Jack Cartwheel, who just did a GLEAT tour, Braden Lee, Matt Fitchett, and Davey Vega as a tag team, and Jake Something in a Brody Lee type role would be the guys that I would want to see in a Dragon Gate USA reboot.
Yeah, I mean, Besties as a tag team makes perfect sense there. I would take Fitchett by himself, but not Vega for, and I feel like that would probably be
you and the rest of the wrestling world, Mike.
right. Yeah. Braden Lee. Yeah. I could see that, but he'd be someone that I'd want to like build up. You know.
Here's the thing with Braden Lee. I saw him for the first time wrestle at the end of 2020. And I said, holy shit, this guy is IWA Mid-South era Matt Sydal. Like, he has that same sort of potential.
He has the vibe.
Unfortunately, I don't think he's improved all that much. Now, that is an issue of just working the Midwest indie scene in 2022. He is the kind of guy that I think benefits most from a Dragon Gate environment. I just need him to wrestle really good wrestlers for 6 months, and then we'll see where he's at. Because I fully believe this guy has a ton of potential to be a Sydal-like wrestler. He's just not, Sydal grew up wrestling AJ Styles and CM Punk and Delirious, and Braden Lee is unfortunately wrestling Silas Young pretty often.
Yeah, it's something that like the problem about this is that this is like kind of like the worst time to like do a revival, I would say. Like just from like the talent standpoint, and I don't think things have refreshed to the level that I would want to see. Like you would be looking for these Braden Lees. Like Titus Alexander, I think would be very close to being there. And I mean, hey, there will be office eyes on him at the very least with the match of La Estrella coming up with him. So I think that there's stuff there. So there's 2 guys actually, and this one would be dream scenario. Everyone's talking and in good terms. I'd want to bring in Gravity and Commander from Big Lucha, 2 of the top students of Bandito.
Yeah, I am with you there. Commander especially, just blowing my mind recently. I like those guys quite a bit, and he's headed to GLEAT with Bandito.
Yeah, I mean he's going to be under good eyes for him. Like it works out best.
Yeah,
it will work out for him long term with someone's eyes. I will get a chance to see him with that. I just think that with how the independent scene is at the moment, like you'd really have to supplement. And I think that Big Lucha with what Bandito has with his students at right now, I feel like that would be something that I would pursue, and I would use that as a way to kind of like rebuild some bridges, I would say. Not that I think a bridge is burnt there, just I think that I would use Big Lucha as a place for my guys on excursion much more than IWRG.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So that would be that's my mindset about reforming DGUSA, is that I would try to pull in there to prop up what I think would be not necessarily a scene that's best geared for it.
A few more questions here. What about your top 5 turns in Dragon Gate history?
So top turn is Shingo Takagi ending New Hazard. I think that one, just like to the dance, to everything with that, I think that was tremendous. And I think when you talk about that one, you also have to talk about a Blood Warriors Junction 3 turn, getting to Dark Hulk permanently. That's such a big one for me. Also, here's like the wild thing about Doyoshi. The first turn was like the biggest one, but I more have like the distinct image of Doi turning to end World 1 International with Dr. Muscle than I do the first turn. So those I think are like the 3 really big turns, at least of like a modern vintage. I do really enjoy how they did the turns with Red and the Demon Masks. Like those would be the back.
That First of all, I should note that question came from Angry216, so I always feel like I should thank just because he's been reading and listening to my stuff for close to a decade now, and I greatly appreciate it. The Yoshida turn, the Yoshida Demon Mask, is an underrated one. I didn't think about that, but that was one that had a ton of hype, a ton of intrigue, and it was still a really shocking result. That was really well done. So I didn't have that, but I'll throw that in as an honorable mention. I'll throw you my top five. I'll go 5-1 here. We'll make this a bit of a game show. Number 5, Naruki Doi turning heel, joining Blood Generation. That was excellent stuff. Number 4, Yamato turning on Berserk and the Dead or Alive 2016 cage match. One of just the pure, just a spectacle like none other, and the turn was beautifully timed there. Go ahead.
I would say that's probably the all-time best face turn in company.
Yes.
Because
that's gotta be.
Because the heel turn's what stick in your mind, but that's the best. That's the example of how do you do like the road to Kobe World? It's like, well, you have Yamato turn face in the cage, and that's your blueprint on how to do a Kobe World weekend right there.
Yeah, because they did. Okay, so this is interesting just because it relates to Yamato, but they did the double turn in 2013. That was Yamato turning heel, or I guess he had just turned heel, and then he choked out Tozawa. So that was like a Tozawa babyface turn, but it was him looking weak. It was him getting beaten down by proxy turning face. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yamato's one of the only guys in company history that has had like a valiant babyface turn. I had never really thought about that, but you're right. And to a degree, the one that follows my number 3, Kness turning on Matt Blanky, joining the Jimmies. A similar vein, and one that I will just continue to reemphasize. If you haven't seen that match, Dangerous Gate 2015, it's on the network. The pop when Kness turns on Matt Blanky is just something else.
Yeah, that's something that's why like Dangerous Gate is something that out of the big shows, it's the one that they're willing to do like the big turns on, and the Tokyo crowd always pays off for it.
Completely. And then number 2, BB Hulk turning on Shingo Takagi to join Blood Warriors. Number 1, Shingo Takagi turning on BB Hulk to form Real Hazard. Those two are just so perfectly done, and definitely my number 1 and 2 on that list.
Yeah, and it's something that, they will try to find a way to make another BB Hulk and Shingo Takagi throughout every... If there's ever going to be 2 classmates, they're going to try that because how successful those are.
It could be, Yoshioka and Daya, could be Ben and Skywalker, could be, I almost called him Kabune, could be SB Kento and Jackie Funky Kamei. There's a ton of possibilities there, given the amount of guys that have funneled through the dojo and debuted on the roster over the last few years. But that is going to be the template, is given when Shingo and Hulk were on the roster and still feuding, we haven't had a chance to see a second generation version of that. And it would be foolish to not attempt to largely just tell that same story over and over again. And luckily, they have a ton of guys to do it. Speaking of, to transition, I got 3 more questions for you. We'll try to go quick here. Somebody asked, do you think in 5 to 10 years, the class of 2020 will be highly regarded like the class of 2016 if Estrella, SBK, Kamei, and Kakuta all stay healthy and in Dragon Gate?
I think that just sheer numbers alone will help them historically. Like we really went into it there, but I think the fact that you have those numbers and the variety, really, you have someone like Minorita that that's some, like, you're not going to get that kind of character in every single class, so you're going to be able to like fill out a card a whole lot more than when you look at class of 2016, and it's only now that all of them have been singles champions at this point, because there's just not that variety. And I think that will be an aspect we'll be talking.
The wild card in terms of the class of 2020 is going to be Kakuta, because I think unless there's a catastrophic injury, SB Kento is going to be a star. I think Jackie Funky Kamei is going to be not the face of this promotion, but the heart and soul of this promotion for 20 years to come. He is this generation's Genki Horiguchi, and if anybody has ever heard an episode of this show before, you know that is the highest of praise coming from me. Estrella, I ultimately don't think is going to mean much in the big picture. It is all about Madoka Kikuta. And if he can become a success, if he can become a Twin Gate level player who can challenge for the Dream Gate once or twice a year, the class of 2020 is going to be very fondly remembered, much like the class of 2016 has become with
Yeah,
Ben and Shun and Yoshioka.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt your point there, but yeah, like, and that goes in the variety because Kakuta is such a different body type from everyone else.
Yes, he is.
And that was not a butt joke. That was just the fact that, I mean, watching him on these shows, he's like the first person who's like, oh, he clearly stands taller than everyone else. He's draped over the top rope just waiting for the tag.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that was, the thing when Kakuta debuted was like, okay, what is this guy? I pegged SB Kento as, the next Yamato, which I still stand by. Kamei was pretty easy to tell early on. Even Sora Fujikawa, we kind of had an idea of what he was going to be had he continued to wrestle. But Kakuta was like this weird, is he Shingo? Is he Susumu? Is he Kondo? Is he something else? And I don't know if we have an old generation comp for Madoka Kakuta. He's that unique.
Yeah, and like he was a capoeira player. Like we've never seen him like do like any Eddie Gordo stuff, which is something that I still am a little disappointed about.
Yeah, very much so. But yeah, he will be the one there that I think really determines how we feel about the class of 2020, because SBK and Kamei are all set. Joe Gagney, friend of the show, noted pervert, as discussed a few weeks ago. He asked a question that I don't know the answer to. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. It's something I've meant to ask at certain times to certain people, and I just don't know. But Gagney asks, how much do Dragon Gate wrestlers earn compared to wrestlers in Noah or All Japan? And specifically, how much is someone like my main man Punch pulling in every year?
So I can't speak numbers, and I don't think really if anyone ever speaks numbers about this kind of stuff, I would raise an eyebrow immediately about that, because I've never heard numbers thrown around. Okay, ever.
No, we half this roster has children we don't know about. They're
Right,
not gonna.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I know that like through colloquially and stories that people that were around in the Toryumon days and throughout like the rise of Dragon Gate, they are doing very well off for themselves, and that's why you see a lot of them doing stuff like Naruki Doi, like physical training, like that kind of stuff, preparing themselves that it's like, okay, I have something to get myself for like the remainder of my working life, basically. And some of them I know that invest. And I know that happened. Like the one like big story, or like the one thing that I remember hearing, and this was all just hearsay, I can't say anything definitively, was that when Akira Tozawa left for WWE, there was not a big monetary difference, or it was not as drastic as one thought, or like a step down or something like this. It was like, oh no, it was something that it was fine.
The only thing I can speak to is that one of the primary reasons for the Toryumon Dragon Gate split per Jay on the Dragon Gate Timeline podcast that were released about a decade ago at this point was, we look at Ultimo Dragon, we look at his Instagram, we look at the lavish lifestyle that he lives. That's not exactly new to Ultimo, but at the time, 2002, 2003 Toryumon, they were running more shows than any other promotion. They were having tremendous business success, and to my understanding, even guys like Shima and Magnum were still not making a ton of money at, either living in the dojo or living in very small apartments, whereas Ultimo, between the WWE money that he was making and then being, the main breadwinner of Toryumon, was living the Ultimo lifestyle. And my understanding is once the company was restructured and they split from Ultimo, that, your Shimas and Magnums and Milanos, etc., were able to make a pretty decent living.
Yeah, I remember a Jack Evans thing talking about like, oh no, like the guys have been around for a while. They're doing great for themselves. Like that was the thing. Like it was something like, oh yeah, no, like with like Masato Yoshino, like I saw his brand new sports car. He's doing fine, But like, and the whole thing of Toryumon, like the only other thing I'll add is think about it this way about the split. Look how many times you see Ultimo on those cards versus Shima, Magnum, and XYZ go down the list there. at a certain time, like you're gonna look and see how the money's going and who's eating well and who isn't, and you're gonna ask why, and why I'm not. And I think that kind of describes that situation.
Final question, ending with a banger, ending with HP Joker, who has triumphantly caught up on Open the Voice Gate. We're no longer going to get messages from an episode we recorded 4 months ago, which is good for me because I was always confused by what I was reading because I don't remember what I say on the show.
Brady, I'm sorry. I don't remember things that I say on a show 4 months ago. I
I don't
apologize.
remember
I can't
talking
engage.
I don't remember talking about Brandy Carlisle on this show. And
I know she's come up on the show, but specifics, no.
I don't remember that. But anyways, he asks, what's the deal with these people who say that the youngins don't have charisma? I talked a lot about this last week. Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So I think the first thing that we have to say is that when we talk about charisma, it is not necessarily the definition of which that you're probably thinking of. And I think that can be a point of confusion here. Because, there's obvious physical charisma here, but it's something also in a company that does certain things and operates on a different kind of plan than your New Japans or All Japans or whatever. You need to be able to be like someone who's charismatic and front facing, and it's something that they don't always have the confidence in the young guys to be able to do that kind
of. I find the whole discussion to be very interesting because I think you can kind of put it into 3 categories where there's people like me that between SB Kento and Fujiwara and Mochizuki Jr., I look at these guys and I go, oh my God, they have everything you could ever want. These guys are young, they're talented, they're charismatic, and I'm very satisfied with what's going on. There's a second camp that looks at those guys and maybe they're a fan of them, but they aren't as high on them as I am. And they go, well, I like the product. I'm bullish about the future, but I worry about these young guys. And I think there's a very legitimate concern, and there's a very vocal camp in that field. There's also a third camp, and I think you'll agree with me on this, that has just seen this company change so much over the last 5 or 6 years. The CIMA fingerprints are gone. The house style has changed. It's not Tozawa, Shingo, and CIMA anymore. And although you and I both love this company, not because of what it represents, but because of what it is now, and we've gone along with these changes, and we've really dove in and accepted them and loved them, not learned to love them, but just love them because we think it's objectively good. There's people out there who see the logo, who see the name, but don't see the talent they once saw, and everything else pales in comparison to 2014, 2015, 2016. And those people are not wrong by any means for holding on to that era with such love and prestige. But I just think they're going to be a generation behind. They're going to have to wait until Fujiwara and SB Kento are Dreamgate champions to see their true talent. And maybe even then they won't get it because they're not CIMA, Shingo, and Tozawa.
Yeah, and actually, I think that third group, there's a real concern with that, and it's not, and when I say concern with that, I'm not talking about international fans, because in the greater scheme of things, we are a drop in the bucket. We don't matter. So the international fans who are drop off on Dragon Gate in the greater scheme of things, that the companies go, okay, whatever, which they're back, but onwards and upwards. But the fact that all these figures that were a part of the fabric and are still a part of the intrinsic fabric of this promotion that's now been going on for close to 25 years now, generation change was going to happen, and losing CIMA and losing CIMA in a way that now that one can argue, I think undeniably, that if you're looking for something that is the CIMA fingerprinted company that you're hoping Dragon Gate to be, there is an alternative for that in a weird way now. I don't know if it's necessarily the company for me, so to say, but there is the veins of that, and there's with this. But I mean, the fact that the company was built on those people, and I can't blame the fans that are oh, I remember like the Crazy Max versus M2K. That was the Dragon System I love. That was this, because I know that that's something that some podcasts have like talked about, it being like, oh, this was the era I really loved with this. But for like Dragon Gate to survive, they had to learn how to get across these generations. So I totally get that. I totally get that, and I think there's actually like a thread there that if there is an existential problem for Dragon Gate, it's that, you know?
I completely agree, and I think in both the international and the domestic front, I just think it's overblown. I just think change is hard for people, and new names are hard to get adjusted to. I really don't think there's all that much different in the talent, whether it was 2001 or 2011 or 2022. The spirit is there, the talent is there. I just think people have been beat over the head with change really ever since Shima left. So much has gone on that from the outside looking in, you can go, oh, it's unstable. You know, Dragon Gate's lost this guy, and Ashita left, and Akuda left, and by the way, Shima left, and what is going on? But if you watch the promotion, it's the same old Dragon Gate. The talent's still there. The names have changed, but the talent's still there. And I think, you know, as these guys get older, you know, your Kentos, your Kameis, your Fujiwaras, your Mochizuki Juniors, your Ishinihashis, these guys are only going to get better. I mean, if this is where they're starting, Dragon Gate is in such good shape for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and like that goes back to that point after Kobe World Weekend where we were discussing business and all things of this, where the point I kind of came to was it's not 10 years now I'm really worried about. I guess it's getting to the point where it's like the next step before we start preparing for like long-term futures here. Yeah, it's something that I think if in the greater scheme of things, if like there was not an immediate tailspin after Shima left with T-Hawk and them, and then if Masato Yoshino retiring didn't like have a tailspin, and there were definite declines that they were able to get back eventually, I would then have that fear. But now I don't have that anymore because if the company like rebounds and like did better business in 2018 at that Kobe World without everyone there, then I think that the long-term stability, it's just finding the connections from one generation to another is going to be a thing. And that's what that third group of fans in a way embodies.
I have nothing more to add. Very well put, Mike.
Yep. Yeah. That was just from the. Sometimes with like these Q&As, I just want you to like present it to me, so I don't have to. So I'm just reacting immediately, not over.
This is a versatile show. You and I can go back and forth. Okay, there's co-hosts here. We can go back and forth. Very talented show. We're good broadcasters.
Yeah. It's not that. It's almost like that we somewhat do this for a living. Somewhat. But I think that was that it for both Discord and Twitter?
That's it.
All right. I think that's going to do it for us this week. Programming note, next week, because there is a Corkin at the front of the month, we'll be having Open the Voice Gate next Friday because there is a Corkin on Thursday. They're closing out February or August into September on a pretty big note with how things are set up in this Osaka #2 show, setting up that Twin Gate match. And then when we get to Kobe or when we get to Corking case, we have fathers and sons uniting, first and second generation wrestlers. I would argue probably like for like this exact kind of thing, this is the first time in Dragon Gate. I'd imagine traditions probably.
You're asking the wrong guy.
It's too late for me to just drop tradition on you. I apologize, Case. So,
I don't know the answer to that.
That's fair. But let's get out of here. You can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify, throw us a 5-star rating and review. It helps more people find out about Open the Voice Gate. And you can follow me on Twitter at Fuchiheya and Case _ in your case. Thanks for listening to Open the Voice Gate. We'll be back with you next Friday talking about Corkin and Osaka Edion #2. Take care, everyone.